morning. I love that so much. Like, that is so much energy. I feel from that. My name is Jessica Sachs, and I am the director of our student ministries here at St. Paul's. What that means is that I get to lead our team of staff and volunteers as they leverage their influence to help form the faith of the students in our next generation. That is all of our students from grades 6 through 12, both here in Joplin and in Carl Junction. In other words, I get to ask you to pray. I get to ask you to pray for not only myself and my staff and my leaders as we walk alongside these students as they navigate this new phase in life. I get to ask you to pray for our students as they are trying to figure out who they are and who they want to be. And I get to ask you to pray for our parents and their families as they walk alongside them in this phase of teenage years, which is fun and exciting, but sometimes a little bit trying, if you remember that at all. That also means that if you at all feel that you have a heart or a calling to the teenage world, if you at all feel like you are led to help build up this upcoming generation, that I'm your girl that you get to talk to be someone to come by in their lives, to listen to them and care for them and walk through them in this next phase. And that is my shameless plug that I had to say. You can't have the stage and miss that. This morning, I am so excited that I get to be with you as we are wrapping up our Wonder Women series with Esther. I was so excited when I found out we were doing this series that I begged the guys to get me the list of names as soon as possible so my friend Katrina could make me a shirt. So in case you have missed it, these are the ladies we've been talking about for the past 5 weeks, and you can catch those messages on our website if you'd like to catch up and see how these women used their position, used their faith and boldness and courage to influence the faith that we are practicing here today in 2019. But before we get started, I would like to introduce myself to you a little bit more, because I know a lot of you in this room, you're fantastic people, but not everybody, and I want us to jump off with a little bit more than, oh, she likes teenagers in custom graphic t-shirts, which is true, but there's more. So I actually grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, in a small suburb called Parkville, which is super cute and quaint if you ever have the opportunity to visit. My family, my immediate family, still lives up in Parkville, and they are watching on the Facebook Live this morning, so hey guys, good to see you, love you. However, my dad is actually here this morning, and so I think we know who my new favorite is. I love you, Dad. Yes, he deserves that. After high school, I attended school at Rockhurst University in downtown Kansas City, and after I earned my degree through the most perfect circumstances that were too good to be coincidence, God led me here to Joplin, Missouri to work in our student ministry. And here we are 5 years later, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you for opening up your church home and your church family to me. Thank you for welcoming me in and loving me and caring for me for the past 5 years. Thank you to those of you who have opened up your homes and fed me. Eternal thanks for that. And I'm so excited for the adventure that we get to continue on together from here. That's really where I wanted to land, was thank you. So this morning, I'm so excited that I get to bring to you the story of Esther, and I've actually had the conversation with multiple of you in the past few weeks that are like, you can almost not do a series on Wonder Women of the Bible or of faith and not include Esther. She is a powerhouse. And I can't wait to bring you this message because when I was in the 8th grade at Lakeview Middle School, they put on the production of Aladdin Jr., the musical. And the best, most prominent character in that entire play was brought to you as narrator number 5. Those were, without a doubt, the best 2 lines spoken in the entire production, as I wore an outfit that my mom made for me out of her curtains. So I get to relive my dream of telling a story as a narrator that's so much fun, and I can't wait to share that with you. Before we jump in, though, I want to encourage you of a couple of things. You should have received a program as you came in, and on there is a great place to take notes. If anything sticks out to you, if you have any questions, if anything is tweetable, that's a great place to write that down. Feel free also to take notes on your cell phone. Live tweet this if you want alongside with our Facebook Live. I won't take any offense to that. But I also want to encourage you to jump into Scripture for yourself this week. We have a phenomenal study guide available on our website and at the Life Desk, and I encourage you to walk alongside that. But since we have a holiday and a lot of us are off tomorrow, I want to push you a little bit further and challenge you to read the book of Esther for yourself. It's really not that long. It's not like you have to read the entire book of the Bible. That is a long read. But it's a phenomenal story with all these really interesting twists and turns that you feel like you're reading a storybook. And it's so much I can't even jump into this morning. So I want to encourage you to take some time, some point this week, to read the book of Esther. Okay, now, without further ado, are you guys excited? As excited as I am? Can't wait. Okay. We begin. We open the scene with King Xerxes. King Xerxes is a powerful king, a very wealthy king. The kingdom of Persia that he reigns over consists of 127 provinces. Oh my goodness. Now, the king at this point has decided that he wants to show off his wealth, because if you're rich, what's it worth if you can't show it off? So he decides to throw a party. Now, if you're with me, you might be picturing something like the Great Gatsby, something just lavish and extravagant, but that all pales in comparison to this party. This festival lasts for no less than 180 days. Yet, after this 6-month-long party, the king wasn't finished. Now he wanted to show off his generosity. So he welcomes the entire kingdom into his palace gates for 7 days to share in his wealth with him. Oh, how generous. Now, at about this point, the king has been bragging about how beautiful his queen is, the most beautiful queen in all of the kingdom. And, well, mind you, the king has been partying for a little while, so he's not of his most sound mind. He's not making the best judgments. So he calls for his queen to come and parade herself in front of all of the men of the kingdom. This request brought to her, the queen, with an ounce of dignity, declines. Which, on a complete other side note, get it, girl. You have every right to say no to that. The queen, in and of herself, is a Wonder Woman, and we cannot pass that up. Yes. Feeling it. Anyways, it's not 2019, and so the king, appalled by this decline, furious, afraid that now every woman in the kingdom will be uprising and say no to her husband, decides something must be done. And so they banish the queen from the kingdom. But now, there's room to elect a new queen, to choose a new queen. So the king holds a beauty pageant. And this is where we get to meet young Esther. Now, real quick, I just want to encourage you to read the book this week, because even just this beauty pageant is ridiculous. It's a whole thing. Just read the book, okay? It's really great. Long story short, Esther becomes queen. So Esther, who actually lost her parents at a young age, was taken in by her cousin Mordecai as her own adoptive daughter. As Esther stepped into this position of queen, Mordecai decided to become a guard at the palace gates to stay close to her and care for her like any caring, protective father might do. Thanks for being here, Dad. I love you. Mordecai, while patrolling the gates one night, overhears of a plot to kill the king. But Mordecai, a Jew, decides to do the right thing and reports the plot to the king, and his life is saved. The king, grateful, records this in the book of the king. Now, sometime later, the king appoints our next friend, Haman. Haman is now the second most powerful man in the kingdom. He is in charge of all of the nobles, and he loves it. Haman, drunk with power, even convinces the king to send out an order that when Haman walks by, everyone must bow to him. Haman, enjoying his little power trip, quickly realizes there's one man in the kingdom who stands guard at the palace gates. A Jew who believes to bow in one God will not bow to Haman. Mordecai. This infuriates Haman. He likes to have the power. He wants everyone to bow to him, and so he decides something must be done about this. And so it's not enough for just Mordecai to suffer. It's not enough to kill just him. Oh, we got to find he's a Jew. All of the Jews must suffer. Haman convinces the king to send out an order that on March 7th, every Jew in the kingdom, all 127 provinces, is to be executed. This is a genocide. And it's only April. The Jews now know that in 11 months, they are going to be killed. So in tradition with the day, they mourn. They dress in sackcloth, they roll in ashes, and they wail. Mordecai alongside them. Now, Esther doesn't know about all of this yet. So she finds out that Mordecai is mourning, and she sends a messenger to find out why. Mordecai sends back, this is the order that has happened, but you are queen. Is there anything that you can do about it? Talk to the king. Can you save your people? Esther responds, the king hasn't called on me for 30 days. I can't just approach him with a technicality. So you can approach the king, but he has a choice. You see, he has a gold scepter, and if he raises it to you, you may make your request. If he does not, well, that's the last request you're ever going to get to make. Sending this back to Mordecai, he responds to Esther with this. Esther, I have no doubt that someday someone will rise up and find the salvation of the Jews. It will happen. But you know that it will not happen until after the day that you, your friends, your family, your entire nationality of people have been wiped out. And then Mordecai says these words that have been passed down of generations of believers since the moment it left his lips. What if, perhaps, you were made queen for just such a time as this? Who knows if perhaps you were made for just such a time as this? What is God calling you to do? What is God nudging you in your life to say yes to? What does God need you to step in to do in this moment for which you were made for? I have no doubt in my mind that there are some of you in this room who know exactly what I'm talking about. You know what God is asking you to step into, and you've been weighing this sacrifice because you're afraid to take that bold step of faith. We fall into this trap that if I'm not saying no yet, then it's okay. I could take some time and make this decision. But the reality is that when we don't decide to say yes, we are just as well deciding to say no. Good intentions never change the world. Think about it. If I decide that I want to be stronger because I want to throw the dodgeball as hard as my high school boys right back at them, but I spend all of my time saying I'm going to get stronger and planning out my gym schedule and comparing gyms and workouts and protein-packed meals, but I never actually step foot inside of a gym, are my muscles ever going to get any stronger? If I decide that I want to save up for a future dream or for my future retirement, but I spend too much time looking at interest rates and financial advisors and thinking about how great of a plan this would be, but I never put a penny in the bank, then I am in trouble in my 60s. If I someday marry a man and say yes to him for a ring and say yes to him at the altar, but do not continue to say yes to him every day of our married life together, I can tell you right now it is not going to work out. And I don't even know who he is yet. Good intentions never change the world. What is God calling you into action? Esther responds to Mordecai. I need you to gather all of the Jews in your region, and I need you to fast for 3 days. Myself and my maids, we will do the same here. And then I will approach the king. If I must die, I will die. 3 days later, Esther puts on her fanciest robes, takes that deep breath of courage, and approaches the king. In a moment that must have felt like an eternity, she waited to see how he would react. And the king raised his gold scepter. My queen, Esther, my love, what is it that you ask? What is your request? I will give it to you, up to half of the kingdom. The king was in a great mood that day. Esther responds, my king, if you have found favor with me, if it pleases you, your majesty, would you and Haman please attend a banquet that I have prepared for you this evening? Absolutely, my love. We will be there. Thank you so much. That evening, the king and Haman attend Esther's banquet, and they eat and they drink and they lounge and they have a great time. So the king asks again, Esther, my love, my queen, what is it that you request? What do you want? You may have it, up to half of the kingdom. Well, if you have found favor in me, your majesty, if it pleases you, would you and Haman please attend a banquet with me again tomorrow night? And then I will tell you what this is all about. Yes, my queen, you may have it. Haman now is headed home on cloud 9 because he went to a banquet with the king and the queen all by himself because he is so important. The best number 2 in the kingdom. And as he is gliding home, he passes the palace gates, and none other than the one Jewish guard who will not still bow to him, Mordecai. Livid, angry, so frustrated by this level of disrespect, Haman goes home and plots to build a 75-foot pole on which to impale Mordecai to have him killed publicly, because that's what happens when you disrespect Haman. And he sleeps happily. Meanwhile, the king is not so lucky. Sleep eludes him. He's tossing, he's turning. It's a restless night. So he calls for the servants to bring him a bedtime story, the book of the king. Because what is a better bedtime story than a book about your life? So the king is relaxing and listening, and the story comes up of this brave, courageous palace guard who stopped a plot to save his life, or to take his life, and saved his life. Mordecai. The king, so generous, goes, oh my gosh, tell me, how did I thank him? How did I honor him for saving me? And the servants are like, oh man, actually, you didn't do anything. The king, prideful of his generosity, is frustrated, furious with himself. How could I not thank the man who has brought me honor, who has pleased me? I must solve this first thing tomorrow. And the king finally falls asleep. First thing, the king calls for Haman and says, Haman, I need you. I have this very important special task. I need your brains. Haman is like, yes, let's go. He said, what could the king do to honor a man who pleases him? How can I thank a man who has brought me great honor? Haman, typical, thinks, oh my gosh, he's talking about me. Like, who else would bring the king honor? Who else pleases the king more than me? Haman. So he devises this beautiful plot. Well, your majesty, you go and get your finest robes, yes, and you dress him in them, and then go fetch your finest horse that you yourself has ridden, your majesty. And then you take this man dressed in these beautiful robes on top of this perfect horse, and you have one of your finest nobles lead him around the city square, announcing, this is what the king does for a man he wishes to honor. That is how you thank him, your majesty. The king, excited, says, oh my gosh, Haman, that is perfect. Now go fetch those robes, go fetch that horse, and oh my gosh, do this for Mordecai. Oh, thank you, leave no detail out. That was perfect. Thank you. Haman, loyal, carries out the task. But he returns home that night dejected and humiliated. But tonight, he has a banquet with the king and the queen, alone. Life can't be that bad. So that night, Haman and the king attend Esther's banquet. They're lounging, they're eating, they're talking, and finally the king says again, Esther, my queen, my love, What is it that you ask? What is it you request? Ask, and I will give it to you, up to half of the kingdom. Esther pauses and says, Your Majesty, if it pleases you, if you have found favor with me, I ask that you save my people. You sent out an order to have all of us killed, wiped out, myself included. Is there anything you can do to save us? If it was just to sell us into slavery, I wouldn't bother you with something so trivial. But to be killed, is there anything you can do to save us? The king, livid at this idea, so angry, demands, Esther, who would do such a thing? Who would even consider laying a hand on you? And then Esther, in the most confident, powerful Wonder Woman moment, goes, him. Haman. Haman is our evil adversary. He is our enemy. He is the one that wanted to have us all killed. The king is red-faced, angry, so much so he cannot contain himself that he stomps off into the garden. Haman knows his life is over, so he begs Esther, please, Esther, is there anything you can do? I'm so sorry. Is there anything left? And in this fit of pity and begging, he falls on the couch on which she is lounging, just as the king walks back in. The king says, oh, you can't wait to assault her? And he sends him off to be killed on a 75-foot pole that he built himself for Mordecai. The king responds to Esther, my love, once I send out an order, there is nothing that I can do to bring it back. But you and Mordecai, you may send out a new order, whatever you want. I will put it on the backs of our fastest horses to each of the 127 provinces. You write this order. So Esther and Mordecai come together to write a new order, that on one day in particular, the Jews may come together. They may unite and stand in defense of themselves in front of their enemies. That day was March 7th, the day they were sent to be killed. In the months leading up to March 7th, people were so afraid of the Jews and their powerful God that some even converted to Judaism to be a part of what they knew would be the winning team. And on March 7th, the Jews stood united, came together, and defended themselves against their enemies. And on March 8th, they feasted. They celebrated a festival called Purim, a festival that they would celebrate every year on March 8th, a festival that Jesus himself would partake in when he walked this earth. They had victory. So my question is this: what is God calling you to say yes to? What does God need you to do? What is God nudging you into right now? I have faith that some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. What is holding you back? Now, some of us may not know yet, and that's okay. Some of us may not have our purpose yet, but that does not mean that we get to stand by and wait idly for God to call us. No, we have the opportunity to say yes to God every single day, to build faith and confidence and courage behind the one power who will call us into his plan where he needs us. We have the opportunity every day to say yes to God in those small ways. We have the opportunity to say yes to God at the sacrifice of another episode on Netflix, to take time to read our Bible, perhaps start with Esther. We have the opportunity every day to say yes to God and to put our phone down, to look the cashier in the eyes at Walmart, to let them know that they have value to us. We have the opportunity to say yes and to crawl out of bed and start our day with a word of prayer instead of hitting the snooze button again. We have the opportunity to say yes to getting to know and spending time with our neighbors when we are too tired or too busy, or we really just don't want to. We have the opportunity to say yes to caring for people who look, act, smell, think, believe differently than we do at the cost of our social standing, because God calls us to love his people. We have the opportunity to step into the lives and the faith of the people in our community, both young and old, who need us right here, right now, to stand with them and speak courage and truth into their life. We get to say yes every day to loving God and his people a little bit more. These women that we have been talking about for the past 5 weeks were nothing special. They didn't attend a special school for gifted young women. They didn't have some special training or education. They weren't bit by radioactive spiders. They were women who loved a God and trusted the plan that he set before them in their lives. We have the opportunity to be Wonder Women and men every single day by saying yes. And I've seen it in so many of you. I have seen people in this congregation take massive pay cuts to jump out of financial security, to jump into the nonprofit world or the ministry, to care for people who need it. I have seen you step out of your comfort of your own home and your own community to go to the ends of the earth to bring people not only the message of Jesus, but to bring them clean water. I have seen you open your homes and welcome in children and teenagers who don't have a natural family to love them as they are, and instead you open your arms and bring them in as if, well, because they are one of you. I have seen you all week after week show up to show the children and youth and members of this church, the people who show up all of the time to care for them and love them. I have seen you show up in the wake of disaster to show people that you are standing there with them. What is God calling you to say yes to? For Lydia, she said yes to opening her home to strangers. She said yes to inviting in even more to begin what we know as the first church in Europe. For Mary, she said yes to a new way of life, to following a new Messiah and staying by his side even when it looked like all hope was lost. For Sarah, saying yes looked like holding on to hope and having patience when the promise that God himself gave her seemed absolutely impossible. For Susanna, saying yes meant teaching her children, teaching her community about this Jesus that has led her to where she is, even when she was told by her own husband not to, because she wanted to show her sons what a bold faith meant to a place that we are even participating in the Methodism that they started back then. To Esther, saying yes meant walking up to even facing possibly her own death to save an entire nation of people. What is God calling you to say yes to? We have the opportunity every day to be Wonder Women and Men. Every day we have the opportunity to be Wonder Women and Men. Are you ready to join the ranks and say yes? Let's pray.